Welcome to our channel, where we bring you gripping real-life stories and compelling courtroom dramas. Today we delve into the divorce that exposed hidden assets worth millions, a tale of betrayal, deceit, and an inspiring fight for justice. Stay tuned as we unravel this captivating case, one lesson at a time. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon for more stories like this. From the outside, Claire and Edward's marriage seemed picture perfect. Claire, a talented artist, and Edward, a successful entrepreneur, were the epitome of the ideal couple. They attended glamorous charity galas, traveled the world, and lived in a stunning mansion in the Hamptons. Yet behind closed doors, cracks were beginning to show. Edward's business empire was thriving, but it demanded most of his time and energy. Claire, meanwhile, felt increasingly neglected, pouring her emotions into her artwork. What had once been a relationship full of love and laughter had turned into one of silence and resentment. The breaking point came during their 20th wedding anniversary celebration. Claire overheard Edward on the phone discussing a mysterious investment with someone she didn't recognize. The cryptic conversation planted the first seeds of doubt in her mind. Despite her doubts, Claire tried to salvage the relationship. She suggested therapy, romantic getaways, and even taking an active interest in Edward's business ventures. But Edward dismissed her efforts, claiming he was too busy with work. Claire's suspicions grew when Edward began returning home later than usual, with vague explanations about late-night meetings. One night, after Edward had fallen asleep, she decided to dig deeper. She began researching Edward's business dealings, searching for answers to the questions swirling in her mind. It didn't take long for her to discover a trail of offshore accounts and shell companies she had never known existed. What Claire uncovered was staggering. Edward had hidden millions of dollars in assets, shielding them from taxes, and she realized from her. The man she thought she knew had been leading a double life. Hurt and betrayed, Claire confronted Edward. Initially, he denied everything, accusing her of invading his privacy. But as Claire presented her findings, Edward's calm facade began to crumble. Realizing that reconciliation was no longer an option, Claire decided to file for divorce. But she was determined to ensure that Edward's hidden fortune wouldn't remain hidden for long. The divorce proceedings promised to be messy, with Edward's hidden assets taking center stage. Little did they know, their case would soon captivate the nation, revealing shocking secrets about the length some will go to protect their wealth. Claire's divorce case took a dramatic turn when Evelyn Marshall, her fierce and strategic divorce attorney, began investigating Edward's finances. Evelyn assured Claire that no wealth hidden in the shadows would remain undiscovered. Edward's legal team tried to present a spotless image of his finances, claiming complete transparency. However, Evelyn's experience told her there was more beneath the surface. She subpoenaed Edward's financial records and hired a forensic accounting team to examine them in detail. The investigation uncovered Edward's web of deception. Offshore accounts in exotic locations like the Cayman Islands and Luxembourg held millions of dollars in undisclosed funds. Evelyn and her team realized Edward had been diverting money into these accounts for years. The evidence grew stronger when Evelyn found proof of Edward's shell companies, created to hide assets and conduct shady financial transactions. These entities were tied to luxury real estate, expensive yachts, and high-profile investments. Claire was shocked to learn that many of the lavish vacations and properties she had enjoyed during the marriage had been funded by this secret fortune. The betrayal stung deeper as she realized how carefully Edward had built his empire of deceit. Edward, however, was relentless in his defense. He insisted that these accounts and properties were part of his business ventures and had nothing to do with their marital assets. His team portrayed Claire as overly dramatic and vindictive. But Evelyn's team was equally relentless. They brought forward emails, transaction records, and even witness testimonies from Edward's former employees who confirmed his efforts to hide wealth from both the government and Claire. The courtroom became a battleground as Evelyn dismantled Edward's arguments piece by piece. She exposed his recent transfer of $2 million into an unknown account, executed just days before Claire filed for divorce. The media frenzy surrounding the case grew louder. Headlines proclaimed Edward's hidden fortune, and public opinion began to sway in Claire's favor. The once private matter turned into a national scandal. As the judge ordered a freeze on all of Edward's accounts, he faced mounting pressure from both the court and the public. Evelyn reassured Claire that justice was within reach, but warned her that Edward would not back down easily. Edward was not one to admit defeat. As his financial secrets unraveled in court, he launched a counterattack, determined to turn the case in his favor. His team brought forward private investigators to dig into Claire's personal life, attempting to discredit her. They alleged that Claire had overspent during their marriage, suggesting that her lavish lifestyle was a major drain on their finances. Edward hoped to paint her as greedy and irresponsible, shifting the focus away from his hidden assets. Claire, however, stood firm. With Evelyn's guidance, she presented her own evidence, bank statements showing that most of her expenses had been funded by Edward, who had encouraged her to live a life of luxury. Edward's legal team also tried to challenge the legitimacy of the offshore account evidence. They argued that the funds were tied to legitimate business dealings unrelated to marital assets. Evelyn countered by presenting a paper trail that directly linked Edward's hidden fortune to profits from ventures established during the marriage. She reminded the court of their state's marital property laws, which mandated equitable division. As tensions escalated, Edward resorted to emotional manipulation. He portrayed himself as the victim, claiming that Claire's lawsuit had tarnished his reputation and hurt his businesses. The media devoured Edward's narrative, but Evelyn wasn't fazed. She anticipated his moves and had prepared Claire to stay composed under the growing pressure. The courtroom became a battlefield of sharp arguments and high emotions. Meanwhile, Edward's employees and associates began to come forward, some anonymously, sharing more evidence of his attempts to conceal wealth. Their testimonies further strengthened Claire's case. The turning point came when Evelyn presented a crucial piece of evidence, a series of emails from Edward's accountant detailing instructions to transfer funds into offshore accounts. The emails left no doubt about Edward's intent to hide assets. The judge, visibly frustrated by Edward's dishonesty, warned him about the consequences of perjury and contempt of court. Claire's confidence grew as she realized the tide was shifting in her favor. Despite mounting evidence, Edward refused to settle. He believed his wealth and influence could sway the case. Evelyn warned Claire that the battle was far from over, but assured her they were close to justice. The case had become more than a legal dispute. It was a public spectacle. Edward's reputation was in tatters, and Claire's fight for justice had inspired others in similar situations to come forward. As the court prepared to hear final arguments, the stakes were higher than ever. Both sides knew that the outcome would have lasting repercussions, not just for Claire and Edward, but for the way high-profile divorce cases would be handled in the future. Edward's arrogance had been his downfall, but he still had one last card to play. Evelyn reminded Claire to stay strong as they approached the moment of truth. The case had become a symbol of resilience against deceit. As the final phase of the trial began, the courtroom was tense. Both legal teams were prepared to deliver their closing arguments, aware that the verdict would have a lasting impact on everyone involved. Evelyn began her closing argument with a powerful narrative. She highlighted Edward's deceit, emphasizing how he had systematically hidden assets to undermine the principle of fairness. She pointed out the extensive paper trail they had uncovered, which linked Edward's offshore accounts directly to funds earned during the marriage. Evelyn's voice resonated with conviction as she called for justice. Edward's lawyer, in contrast, argued that Edward had acted within his rights as a businessman, claiming the assets were tied to ventures unrelated to Claire. Their defense attempted to frame Edward as a victim of public scrutiny. The judge listened carefully to both sides. The evidence was overwhelming, but Edward's legal team hoped to sow doubt about Claire's intentions, suggesting she was motivated by revenge rather than fairness. Claire took the stand one last time. She spoke about the betrayal she felt, not just as a wife but as a partner who had trusted Edward completely. Her heartfelt words left a visible impact on those in the courtroom. Edward, too, was given a chance to speak. He admitted to moving funds, but claimed it was done to protect his family's future, not to deceive Claire. His tone was defensive, and his words lacked sincerity. The judge delivered a scathing rebuke to Edward, stating that his actions had not only violated the law, but had also eroded trust in the sanctity of marriage. The courtroom fell silent as the verdict was announced. The court ruled in Claire's favor. Edward was ordered to pay her a significant settlement, which included the hidden assets that had been revealed during the trial. Justice had prevailed. Outside the courthouse, Claire faced the media. She thanked her legal team and spoke about the importance of standing up for one's rights, inspiring others to seek justice in their own lives. Edward left the courthouse with his head low, his reputation in ruins. The case had not only cost him millions, but had also tarnished his legacy as a successful businessman. For Claire, the victory was bittersweet. She had fought for what was rightfully hers, but had also endured a painful and public ordeal. She resolved to use her experience to help others facing similar battles. The case became a landmark in divorce law, a cautionary tale for those who thought they could evade justice through deceit. Lawyers and legal experts discussed its implications for years to come. In the end, Claire found peace knowing she had stood up for herself and uncovered the truth. Her journey reminded everyone that even in the face of betrayal, resilience and justice could shine through.